Hello and welcome to the Madecast, the official podcast of the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment, a series of lectures on video game history as part of the Made's ongoing effort to preserve history through teaching and displaying playable exhibits of rare games and consoles.
While life in a time of COVID has forced us to close our doors, the support of people like you has allowed us to continue to bring history to you through lectures like the one you'll hear in a few minutes. I'm Anthony.
I'm Chen.
I'm Red.
And I'm Miles. Today we sit down with Brennan Anderson, technical sound designer and composer over at Crystal Dynamics, who most recently worked on Marvel's Avengers. We talked to him about his journey through the game design sphere, his path, his process, and because we ran very long, we split this into two parts. And the second part we get into dynamic audio, which he is very interested in. But first,
it's a very interesting conversation that we had, and we recommend you guys stick around for both parts because he's an interesting person with an interesting story, and his process and talking through dynamic audio is really awesome and eye-opening.
Absolutely. But first, it's E3, so you know what that means.
And doom. List it off. List all the rain.
A lot of stuff happened over the past week. So let's just run down the list. Elden Ring.
Everything happened.
Everyone's very excited about Elden Ring. It's coming January 21st. We saw a trailer. It looked good. Back 4 Blood from the makers of Left 4 Dead 2 is coming October 12th of this year. I'm very excited about that. Avatar, the blue ones. It's a game coming out next year. Stalker 2, very excited about that. April 28th of 2022. Redfall, which looks kind of like Left 4 Dead but with vampires and magic and things. And robots, I think. The trailer looked weird. I was very excited about it.
It looks very interesting, yes.
It's from Arcane, which is one of my favorite studios, and it's coming summer of 2022.
Basically, the biggest thing that we got so far this year out of E3 is all the fun stuff is next year. most of the fun stuff is next year, but there's still a lot of good things that we had. They announced the Outer Worlds 2. We have a Borderlands spin-off game and live-action movie. Solar Ash. Was that the same dude that made Hyper Light Drifter and Heart Machine?
Yeah, Solar Ash Kingdom is from Heart Machine, which is a small indie studio, and they previously made Hyper Light Drifter, which is a really good.
I love that game. Yeah,
really good sort of 2D not platformer, like side scroller and beat 'em up. Great aesthetic. Yeah. I loved it.
It's fantastic. And then, so big things for this year. Right, Battlefield 2042 in end of October. Metroid Dread, first 2D side-scrolling Metroid in over 19 years, coming this October. It looks fantastic. As far as Bethesda's concerned, Starfield, November 11th of next year. First game using their new engine. Looks amazing, and it looks like a spaceship switching simulator. It looks pretty sweet. And then we also have Square Enix Babylon's Fall. We got a lot going on. It's going to be a pretty fun lineup for coming. And I think we can talk about some of our favorites once we get into the next part of the interview in the recording. So next episode, we will get into more talking about what we personally enjoy about this list and what we're most looking forward to. But before that, let's get into the first part of our interview with Brennan Anderson. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Madecast. I am Red, and we are here with Chun and Miles today. We are going to be interviewing the wonderful and marvelous Brennan Anderson from Crystal Dynamics today. Welcome, Brennan.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Very happy to have you on today. Brennan has been working at Crystal Dynamics as a sound designer and audio producer for a few years now, and we are here to kind of pick your brain and talk about dynamic audio in games, as we are all looking to try and break into that field. So
awesome.
How about you start out on what inspired you to go to game audio? What made you want to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, so it was probably when I was, well, I don't even remember how old I was at this point. It was like I was either between 9 and 12, I guess. And I was playing Final Fantasy VII. And, which
Of
is
course.
where, I don't know, maybe 60-70% of millennials who do game audio start.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was just, I mean, obviously Nobuo Uematsu is one of the best composers, I think, in our lifetimes. But it wasn't just him. It was that perfect storm of mixing sound, narrative, and visuals. It just, blew my mind back then. And I remember thinking like, obviously, started crying when Aerith's theme came on and all of that. And thinking just like, man, like, having this realization that it didn't just exist out of nothing, that, people actually created this. And it was like this gift that they were giving to the rest of the world. And I was just like, I want to do that, right? Like, I want to be a part of that. And so I started to first write music, and then for a few years did that. I think I remember the first piece of music I wrote was actually for my mom for Mother's Day.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So it was like, because it was just right around the corner. I was like, oh, she used to play piano. I'll just write a little thing for her on the piano. And I did. And then I just kept doing it. Never, ever stopped. And so, started taking music composition lessons and stuff like that when I was a teenager. Took all the classes I could in high school. I actually was going to go to college for music, but I decided against it because it was very expensive. Is one reason. But also, I was just like having more fun doing it on my own and exploring the game side of it than, if I were to go into music education, it would have been more like theory and film score and just like deeper study into classical musicians, which is great. But I was more interested in studying Nobuo Uematsu, Koji Kondo, and then starting to look into the more modern American video game composers, and so I ended up I think I went to like a semester of college and dropped out, moved to San Francisco, went to Pure Mind to do study music production, and then after that, because my my teacher there, Matt, actually knew some guys at Disney. He was in an 80s cover band with some guys who worked at Disney, and so I got an interview there and started working at Disney Interactive in 2000. What was it? 13, I think.
Nice.
Something like that. So that's kind of where my career really started. I had tried to do some indie stuff before that, but with varying success because it's really hard.
Yeah.
But then
the indie market.
Yeah, but at Disney, I really got started doing technical stuff, like technical sound design and implementation and stuff like that. To the point where like I actually like before I started studying at Pure Mind, I was just on the path of I only want to do music. I don't want to learn any programming. I don't want to learn implementation. I just want to write cool music and then let other people handle it. When I was like 18 or 19 and studying, my cousin actually challenged me on that. He was like, yeah, I don't think you could do it anyway. I think, we were talking about programming. And he's like, if you were just going to try this, like it would take you at least 3 weeks or something like that. Like some absurd amount of time that was like way too long for what we were talking about. Cause like I was starting to be interested in like, well, what if I like put the sound in the game, but then changed the sound based on, what the players are doing. And so he challenged me and I actually like a few hours later called him and was like, I did it.
Nice. Proved you wrong, brother.
Yeah. So it was something really simple. I think it was like, playing different versions of a sound effect when the sound played over and over again.
Oh, okay.
So
Like a
yeah.
randomization or
yeah, exactly. Just
Okay.
randomizing the sound. And I mean that was before I knew what Wise was, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you know, and so I was just trying to do it myself from scratch in Unity, and for some reason I just fell in love with it, right? So I
Mhm.
started just thinking about more and more about how technology impacted music and sound design. I got a little more interested in sound design as well, and then just started studying as much as I could. I started learning all the middlewares and all of that. So then by the time I got to Disney, I had all of these technical skills, and that was one of the big reasons they hired me, um,
Okay.
because they were just starting to have the sound team do their own implementation, and so I was going to come in and help with that, and I did, but eventually, because my manager there knew that I was really really into music as well, he actually had me start writing music for games. And I think the first one I did like some reorchestration work on Where's My Water 2.
Okay.
And then after doing a few of those, he was like he came to me and was like, okay, look, we're making this Star Wars game. These are all mobile games. But he said we're making this Star Wars game. I don't know if I'm gonna have enough time to write the whole soundtrack. So just as a backup, why don't you write one piece of music? And so I did, and I spent so much time just like at home at night, like with getting no sleep, writing that, and gave it to him, and he's like, "Oh, that sounds really good." And then I think a few days go by, and he's like, I'm still running out of time. Why don't you write another one just as a backup?" And I was like, "Okay." And so I wrote another one, and then another one, and then eventually I had written all the music for the game.
That's how he got you. That's how he got you there.
Yeah.
Just
So that's really where my career doing music for games took off, and then so I worked on a bunch of mobile games at Disney. I think
awesome.
in total we released like 30 of them that I had worked
Wow.
on. Like I think half of them I did music, the other half I just did implementation and sounds.
Mhm.
Then after that I left Disney and went back to Pyramind to actually work on their production side. Worked on a
awesome.
bunch of VR and indie games there that were really cool. And then I went to Crystal Dynamics after that because I had always wanted to go into AAA games. And Crystal Dynamics wasn't doing any music. It was just doing implementation and sound design. But I was always, keeping my eyes open, my ears open for an opportunity. And in the first level of the game, there was this arcade section, and I, had really, really become passionate about writing retro style music, both 8-bit and 16-bit SNES type stuff. And so I said, let me just write some stuff for the arcade. And they're like, okay. And so I wrote like 3 or 4 tracks, and they put them in the game, and it was awesome. So I have music in a AAA game too. So in Avengers,
That's fantastic. Congratulations on that. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's just kind of a broad overview of my career.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like a dream path. I mean, just like getting to work in a lot of different sections and just kind of making connections along the way.
Yeah. It definitely wasn't a straight path whatsoever. It was windy and had no idea where it was going at points. But it was fun. It is.
Yeah. Would you like say to other people that is make sure that you're enjoying yourself while you're doing the work that you're doing, or
I
do
think
you think that that's a big part of it, or can you get lost and kind of like lose the enjoyment after like a burnout?
Yeah. I mean, burnout's a big thing. So I would say that just in my experience, the nature of kind of not knowing where you're going next and what you're necessarily going to do, but doing audio and just music and sound design is enjoyable for me. Like I enjoyed every bit of it. Where burnout really became an issue. I mean, there are a couple times at Disney when you're working really hard, and then you gotta slow down a little bit. But it wasn't as much of an issue until I got into AAA games. And now I know this isn't going to be the experience for everybody. I mean, I know people who work in indie games who get burnout as well.
Mhm.
But like, for me, everything was kind of shifting so much that I didn't feel burnt out because, like, I would be on a new project and then it, get reinvigorated. But in AAA games, I spent the last 3 years doing pretty much the same stuff.
Mhm.
Different sounds, but same kind of stuff. And just the amount that I had of work that I had to put in, I think really caused some burnout. And to where I
Mhm.
had to like take 3 weeks off, and I started just taking Fridays off, and I would be less productive and stuff like that. So I think one thing for people to know is that while yes, this is a passion for probably everybody doing this work, it is still work, right? Just because you're passionate about something, just because you love it and enjoy it, does not mean that it is not difficult and that it can't cause burnout, because it can. So definitely enjoy it, but pay attention to how the work makes you feel and how that work makes you feel over a period of time, because that's really important.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's definitely, I think more people in many facets of life can listen to that alongside of anything. Uh, Miles, do you have any questions for
Yeah,
Brennan
I
right now?
probably maybe want a little bit more explanation to our listener who may not be familiar with audio production. So we probably know about composers, we know about sound designers, but people probably have some they probably need more understanding about technical sound designer, which is a little bit different with just sound designer. So would you mind explaining how much different is between these two jobs, and how far will technical sound designers goes into the game engine side or just the middleware side compared to the sound designer?
Yeah, I was actually kind of ruminating on this recently, and talking with a colleague about it. And because I would describe myself in what I currently do as a technical sound designer. Um, and what a technical sound designer is really the kind of the go between from audio and engineering, right? Or you could say they're the liaison, but really what their job is to be an advocate for the audio team, and make sure that all of the audio team's needs are fulfilled in terms of whether you're doing implementation, scripting, programming to make sure the audio plays correctly, um, but also to be a good citizen for the game, and to say, well, here are the audio team's goals, and here are the goals of the game. How can we make them work together to achieve something great? And sometimes that means, collaborating with the engineering team and saying, we need this tech so that the audio can do this. Sometimes it means working with the artists and saying, hey, what does your pipeline look like? And can we use that to influence audio? And can audio influence that? And kind of negotiating with all these different people, and seeing how the audio team's processes and their processes can work together. So on a very kind of practical level, that looks like saying like, hey, so here's your animation system. Here's what the audio team wants to do. They want to play a sound effect whenever the boss enemy does this animation when they smash a hammer on the ground. What kind of limitations does the animation system have? They'll tell us, and I might go in and dig into the animation system and create events, or create or make code or whatever to be able to let the sound designers say, play a sound when this animation event starts happening, stuff like that. So some places have dedicated technical audio designers, versus dedicated just sound designers, where the sound designers will just make sounds, and they'll record stuff and they'll make it sound really cool in their DAW, and sometimes maybe even put it into middleware. Then their sound designers will go into that middleware and make sure the sounds are set up properly, routed to the correct auxiliary buses, stuff like that, and then actually go into the game engine, and if it's visual scripting, say put a play sound node here, and then run all the data into whatever RTPCs you need, or maybe it's doing that same thing but in code. You're looking through a bunch of logic to find the correct place to make the sound actually play. And then some places, like at Crystal Dynamics, we do both. Like all of the audio designers actually do technical sound design and regular sound design. I'm probably more on the technical side. I do less of the actual recording and the sound design part, but get deeper into the engine. And then sometimes I will get like into the engine part, like how does the sound system, because we use our own proprietary stuff. How does the sound system play sounds, and can we manipulate that somehow? But usually I'm working with a like more senior engineer on that kind of stuff, like especially for things like the dialogue system or something like that. If we need a feature change, that's usually someone else, a different engineer who we collaborate with to get that done.
That's a pretty good explanation. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, pretty long. You might need to cut some of this down.
It's fine.
No.
Yeah.
It's fine.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Cool.
This is the juice that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, all the little bit of special info that the regular public doesn't really get a chance to look into all that often.
People
Yeah.
needs to know more about it.
Yeah, I mean, sound for games is so unique and unlike any other form of creation for any other medium.
It's
So
just so often that people forgot about there has to be someone to make sounds for the game, and has to be someone to make all the stuff happening. It's just very minor in the public compared to the visual stuff.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it's interesting, like we're kind of, I've heard many people say, if we've done our job right, you won't even notice the sound.
Yeah.
Like, it'll just
Yeah.
feel good. Like the game will just feel good. But like, so we go so unnoticed, but we, other than I would say engineers,
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to guess that we have to do more work in terms of understanding everyone else's pipelines than
Mm-hmm.
most other disciplines. That's not to say all of them, but
Mhm.
like we have to understand some of the engineering pipeline, animation, VFX, combat design, level design.
Exactly.
We have to understand all of that to be able to.
We need to
put
find a
sounds
hole
in
so
it.
that we can put something into it.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of work,
it's a lot of work.
but
Yeah.
but we like to be unnoticed sometimes.
Mhm. just be in the background. It's like, yeah, that was me. Yeah.
Sometimes it feels good, like
Yeah.
the secret hero of the
A
game.
lot of the times it feels good.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, and so any other what is kind of like your favorite thing about working with like do you work in Wise mainly for middleware stuff, or
So currently I don't, because we use our own proprietary engine.
oh okay
At Crystal. I have worked in Wise, but I guess to kind of like translate it, the tools that I use are similar to Wise.
Mhm.
So the amount of time, I mean, there's not that much time in the audio specific tools. I mean, like we do, set the sounds up and do, basic volume and pitch and stuff like that on them. But I would say that most of our time is actually in either visual scripting or code, finding the correct places to play the sounds. And then
Mhm.
actually an even greater amount of time goes into testing,
Mm.
running the game, finding the part of the level where the sound plays, and then making sure it's all correct. So
Yeah, and then where does it break, and how do we fix it? Yeah.
So there's a decent amount of time in things like Wise, but it's not it's not like 90% of the time in Wise. It's maybe, I don't know, 40-50%. If that.
Okay. Well, I think it's unfortunately we're having to wrap up pretty soon. I wish we had more time to talk about this shit, but we'll have to have you back on in the future if you'd be welcome.
Yeah.
So if you want to promote anything that you're currently working on and what you've been any games you've been working on currently, anything you want people to check out, where people can find you, contact you.
Yeah. Just check out Marvel's Avengers. I put in a lot of work on that, so I think it's a fun game. And then you can find my personal stuff on my website, brennananderson.com. And yeah, that's about it.
Alrighty. Well, Brennan, thank you very much. We are very happy to have you on today. And we will talk again and hopefully have you on in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you very much, Brennan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.
And welcome back. Thank you very much, Brennan Anderson, for that thoughtful talk about your journey and how you got your start. And we will look forward to hearing more from you in the future and talking with your next interview, hearing more about the dynamic audio. It's a good one. Stick around for that on next week's episode. But now we need to talk about what we've been playing. So we had all these announcements, but what has everyone been playing?
Well, I recently finished up Deus Ex Human Revolution. I mentioned it previously that I've been going through it.
It looks pretty amazing. I also wanted to say, is Human Revolution essentially what Cyberpunk wanted to be?
I don't. Okay.
No, great reaction. I think I got all I know.
I really enjoyed Cyberpunk. We're beating a dead horse.
It's a good game.
I'm sure it is.
Story.
I'll get it at some point. Human Revolution, I really enjoyed playing, but not because it was good. I'm coming down hard against Human Revolution. It was not a well-made game.
Like clunky wise, or
it had a lot of great ideas and implemented none of them well.
I see. Yeah, that does sound like a bit of a hassle.
The story was entertaining enough, but sort of dumb. I'm screwed. It's 12 years old at this point. I'm going to spoil it.
Yeah.
Your scientist girlfriend steals your DNA and uses it to make cyber implants more acceptable for the masses. Because previously there was this whole process of, you have to get the implants, but then your body rejects them, so you have to take drugs for the rest of your life. She figured out a way to solve that, but she did it by stealing your DNA. And then she gets kidnapped right at the start of the game, and you get, crushed under rubble and have to get basically superpowers to survive.
Oh no, you have to get superpowers.
Yeah, well, you get, you get like 90% of your body replaced. You're like RoboCop at this point. And then you have to go around sneaking and hacking and beating up thugs and figuring out what's going on. And finally, you figure out that it's the Illuminati. Yes, the actual Illuminati.
Because of course. The Illuminati's behind everything. Haven't you been paying attention?
And
no,
the writing is passable. But I was playing it on stream with my friends, and like it was too much. It was too much to take seriously, and the writing did not support the level of what it was asking for. It was asking for you to take it very seriously and be invested in these people, and you just can't do it.
I see. And that's the thing that gets me about certain games of that like science fiction genre. people sell it almost as like a like the acting is almost kind of like a teleplay or like a soap opera. It's not given with like the same heart as you were trying to be like realistic and real world.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes harder to believe a fake story if they're kind of doing this over emotive kind of play acting. It takes it out of a serious moment when they're trying to do a serious game like that. At least for me at some points, but to each their own. I mean, I've heard it was a fun game from people that I trust their opinion, and I'm really interested in checking it out. But
it was entertaining. I had a lot of fun with it.
Okay.
But not because it was good.
It was a fun game.
Yeah. Well, no, it was a fun game. It just was not a good game.
Okay.
It was extremely competent. Like I didn't run into game-breaking bugs. Everything was fairly minor. It was just kind of like, yeah, why bother? But you can still find enjoyment in those games.
Yeah, we'll see. Anthony, Chun, you've been playing. You let us know before we started that you've been getting into the fighting game genre.
Yeah, you won't believe it. It's my first ever fighting game, and I chose it to be Guilty Gear Strive.
It's the right choice.
The music, it's just different. I mean,
it's the best. It's the best fighting
game
music, hands down.
I really didn't. I heard about it. I heard people saying something good about it, but I didn't really expect that to hit that hard when I was playing. And being a first time for playing fighting games, it did feel a little sometimes.
Well, it's like now that you can actually be in the same room with somebody, you can go over and couch fight.
Yeah, but it does take time to build up some very basic skills and sense of playing a fighting game, just like how people always joke about when you first played like let's say a FPS and you just stand there and don't even know what to do, and you probably don't even know
just
how
like aiming up in the sky and spinning around.
It's more like that kind of issue when you first get into the fighting game, but I think it does take a little bit more extra time to learn about how you should play the game.
Well, I mean, here's to your future endeavors, and I hope your skills ramp up fairly quickly, because Guilty Gear is it's quite the game. It is quite the game.
Yeah.
But I do have to say right now, I think it might be time for us to wrap up and throw it on over to next week, where we can continue talking about what we've been playing and our favorite E3 choices, as well as talking about dynamic audio with Brennan Anderson, who, thank you again for coming on. It was a lovely talk, and we appreciate you supporting the Made. But we want to thank you for listening to the Museum of Art and Digital Entertainment's official podcast. If you have any thoughts, questions, corrections, or general museum ideas, please shoot us an email at info@themade.org.
We'd like to send a big thank you to everyone who donated recently, and to our Patreon supporters who keep the Made afloat. Patreon donors get to listen to this podcast 1 week before it's released on major streaming services, and we'll continue that with future episodes every week. Till then, I'm Anthony.
I'm Miles.
I'm Red.
I'm Chun. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.